What's up, Dog Nation? Jeff Sintel, DogNation.com, coming at you. New format, new time, new recruiting class. We just thought we'd come at you guys with everything. We're going to go back to, let me just answer the first questions off the top. We're kind of going to go back to our roots on this program, which is not me and my squeaky screen door on my porch, not me in my basement with my kids coming around, but we're in the studio, 6 p.m. Wednesday nights. Give us a lot more opportunities to bring in some guests, give us a lot more opportunities to maybe react to the news of the day, especially during the off season. I will be flying solo on these programs. I might be able to drift in a special guest every once in a while, and even I'm sure we can get Connor Riley behind the glass to lend his viewpoint and his voice on some things from time to time. But we've got a new Before the Hedges format. Even got that green background for Before the Hedges behind us. Hope all you guys noticed that. What we're going to do, going to feel a little bit like all those old school, new school Before the Hedges programs. We're going to have some online chatter. We're going to have the top targets. We're going to have a juicy interview or video package from time to time. And maybe once the weeks go by, we'll get back into that six-pack trivia for everybody to play along with as well. But tonight, we had a few special things we wanted to get to you guys. And 2021 class, it's hard to believe that this time ago, just a week ago, Georgia was signing its #1 recruiting class for the 2020 cycle. All the big names, all the guys, the 5 stars, the late close to the class, lots of storylines that wound up going in Georgia's favor, especially that finishing kick of a lot of in-state Georgians who ended up joining the program. I want to say welcome to everybody on Facebook. Welcome to everybody right now on Twitter. We got some issues right now with our YouTube group, but right now we decided to go ahead and start our program with a good look at everything and looking at the 2020 class in our rearview mirror. Let's focus on our 2021 guys and our top targets. As stated before, give me about a little bit to get through some of these 2021 top targets. And then we might just have a special guest on the line to join us as well as the program goes along. First of all, just want to say hello to everybody. As we get started, let's start taking a look at that 2021 class and those top targets. There was some news today as a member of this top targets class for 2021. Came up with a top schools list. We'll check that young person's name out in a minute. But as of right now, we're going to invert the thing. Everybody remembers that Top Gun line where the plane was inverted? Well, that's kind of what our new top targets format is going to be like for the 2021 class on this program. So we're going to start with number 12, and then we're going to work our way down the list all the way down to number 1. And with that, we've got a guy that shows up on our 2021 top targets list for the first time. This is the version 4.0. Our number 12 guy on our top targets list, that's going to be 4-star outside linebacker Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner, thing to know about Mr. Turner is he went to the same American Heritage program for his sophomore and junior seasons. That's American Heritage of Sony Michel, of Marshall Morgan, of Isaiah McKenzie, and of Tyson Campbell. He picked up Broward County Defensive Player of the Year honors after his junior season. He's a 4-star outside linebacker. Just recently made a move to St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. Rangy outside linebacker type. He debuts on our 2021 top targets list at number 12. Got a lot of schools that are after him. Alabama's a school. Georgia's a school. There's something different, he says, about visiting Georgia. Dan Lanning has made him a priority. Another South Florida, Georgia target. A lot of folks are going to wonder, what's Georgia going to be like recruiting that part of South Florida with all those rich recruiting targets now that James Coley is now in the Texas A&M program. Right now, Dallas Turner just took a good visit, another very good visit to Georgia for the Junior Day weekends in January. And now he's coming back to, everybody's got the dead period right now for the month of February. Nobody's going to take any visits. The on-campus contact is restricted by the NCAA. You'll still see a lot of those social media exchanges. There'll be some texting. They can still call. They can still interact on social media through DMs and text messages. But this is a natural break in the recruiting calendar, that 12 months a year, 24/7, 363, 365 news cycle and contact cycle where through smartphones, it gives a lot of these coaches some chances, especially the coaches on the Georgia staff, to maybe take a family vacation, a well-earned family vacation in the month of February. You got Dallas Turner right there, number 12. Number 11 on our list as we move forward with our top targets for the 2021 class. You had Dallas Turner at 12. Turner is now at St. Thomas Aquinas. He is visiting. Turner is the nation's number 17 outside backer. The next name on the list, that's going to be a lot of that five-star stuff folks like to know about. That's Tony Grimes out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Now, Tony Grimes is the nation's number 1 cornerback for the 2021 cycle. Got to speak to him in Orlando at the Future 50. He's currently not doing any interviews for the time being, but just took a junior visit, another junior day visit to Georgia. That went well. That was an important visit for Georgia because what Georgia needed to do there is he told us at the Under Armour Future 50 that Georgia needed to have a great visit in order to kind of stay among his top schools list, and that's exactly what the Bulldogs did. He actually stayed over for another day on Sunday to check out the Bulldogs, and he's a name that everybody's popping up. Like, can Georgia include a pair of 5-star cornerbacks for this cycle? The other name that comes to mind is Isaiah Johnson. You'll see Isaiah Johnson's name later on in this list, but for right now, you got Tony Grimes, one of those lockdown elite cornerbacks. Slowly but surely, Georgia is cornering the market on top 5 corners. You think about Tyson Campbell, you think about Tyreek Stevenson, you think about Keely Ringo. Jalen Kimber finished up, I believe, number 6 in the 2020 cycle as well. And all of a sudden, that defensive back position is looking very sporty and very robust with some of the elite athletes in the country. Tony Grimes, very well, highly rated by all services. As we stated a second ago, he's the nation's number 1 cornerback for the 2020 cycle. Number 7 overall prospect, another top 10 type guy, Tony Grimes out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Already visited Georgia a couple of times. There's the talk right now that could Georgia end up with 2 5-star corners in this class? Man, that's certainly hard for any school to be able to pull that off. But Georgia currently is in an enviable position with where things stand right now for Tony Grimes in the 2021 recruiting class. Next up on our list, you see we added two names to go out to 12. I did that because there are 12 months to go until next year's signing days, at least the February signing days. But so you saw 2 new names, but also we have a new name as well at number 10 for this week on our top targets countdown. Number 10 you see is Evan Pryor, Cornelius, North Carolina. He was also at Georgia for a junior day visit. He's got some news coming this week. I would expect him to name his top 6 schools, and I would look for Georgia to definitely be in there. Evan Pryor already told us, if you read that report on Dog Nation this week, that Georgia was going to make his top schools list. Georgia, even though he's been there several times to Georgia, was going to get an official visit, even though that's one of those proximity official visits that he doesn't necessarily need to take. But nonetheless, he told us at Dog Nation that Evan Pryor said that Georgia will get an official visit as well. And he's looking to ballpark his idea. He's going to ballpark basically, he wants to make his college decision in the summer before his senior season. Evan Pryor, number 10 on the list right now for Georgia in the Georgia Dog Nation top targets list. Coming up at number 9, number 9 on that list, we've got a name that I think everybody's going to keep in mind when you look at those things. When you look at the top players in the 2021 cycle, the next name on the list, is it going to be a tight end? Is it going to be an offensive lineman? Is it going to be another offensive lineman? And you see Micah Morris. Micah was actually a higher rank last week. He was 8. You guys saw the update with Micah Morris. Remember how he had to restart and hit the reset button on his recruiting? Micah had wanted to make his decision in mid-December. I was feeling a certain type of way about a lot of his schools, but then the Sam Pittman decision, the changes at South Carolina, the changes at Florida, the changes at Auburn caused him to rethink his decision. The young man from Camden County certainly has a very mature approach. He's the nation's number 4 offensive tackle, 6'5", and he's up to 335 pounds right now. The number 42 overall prospect in the country. He's going to make another unofficial. He says he's going to take unofficials to Florida and Auburn in the month of March. And then he's going to go about his walk and go about his business of making his official visits, and then he'll know his college destination after he takes his official visits in the spring. You see him right there working at the opening regionals. That's him after his sophomore season. That's in his sophomore year prior to his junior season. And Micah Morris made the top 5. He's a name we've been talking about and watching in the 2021 cycle for quite some time. He was one of the few prospects that was able to kind of hold back future Clemson 5-star signee Miles Murphy at that event. And he's a guy, look at it, the size. He's working on his bend. He wants to get a little bit more flexible for his senior season. Feels really good about Georgia. Georgia actually benefited from having a good relationship when Matt Luke was at Ole Miss. Micah told me that him and his Camden County football team, the offensive linemen and defensive linemen, they went to Oxford for basically a lineman-type team camp, for at least for the position, and got to hang out with Matt Luke. He knew him then. He knew him there. And so there was already a really good relationship there between Micah Morris and Coach Matt Luke at Georgia. Micah even told me that he felt that probably the best possible guy Georgia could hire in hindsight to replace a guy like Sam Pittman would have been Matt Luke. So right there you got Micah Morris, number 9 prospect, and another one of those big prospects for Georgia for the 2021 cycle, especially trying to maybe stay in the state and maybe kind of clean up on Peach State road graders for the 2021 class in this cycle. Next up on our list on the 2021 top targets, if you got a guy that also just recently took his visit, it's going to be a familiar name. And I tell you, this young man is a very uncommon recruiting story, especially how he's out there in Arizona. The next name on the list is Quentin Somerville, the 4-star. I think he rates now as the number 74 overall prospect on the 24/7 Sports Composite. But guys, there are a lot of coincidences stacking up right now with Quentin Somerville. Saguaro High School, that's the same high school that Keely Ringo attends, where he's going to graduate from. That's the 5-star cornerback that everybody knows his name in the 2020 recruiting class. But Somerville, he grew up in Arizona, but oddly, he confesses to being a Georgia fan. He remembers really watching A.J. Green catch passes for the Bulldogs in for those early 2000 teams coming up. And for some reason, he was mesmerized by that. The big stadiums, watching him on TV. He always wondered and dreamed what it would be like to play in front of that crowd. And when Quentin got the offer from Georgia, it was definitely a very uncommon reaction. He'd said that something is an offer he's been dreaming about. Now that Quentin looks back on his decision and his process and his walk going forward, he told me that the Georgia offer was definitely a pivot point for his recruitment. It was a chance for him to really see he was a national recruit, and all of a sudden he started getting a lot more schools that offered him, he felt, based off the Georgia offer. And when he spoke to me about his Georgia unofficial visit, he called it incredible. He called it special. It was one of those conversations as he listened to him from across the phone where it really sounded like he was smiling the whole time when he was talking about Quentin Somerville talking about Georgia. He mentioned the growing relationship with Kirby Smart and how they talked about more than football. He mentioned about how Dan Lanning, he got a chance to know Dan Lanning really well. And Quentin's got to make his moves fairly fast because he wants to commit in June. That's for his mother's birthday. And he knows he's already going to take an unofficial visit back to Georgia and another official visit back to Georgia. Very interesting in the way this recruiting goes forward. His mom and dad came along, also his sister. It was a highlight for his sister to be able to meet Ron Corson because, another ironic coincidence here. His younger sister, who's a sophomore at Saguaro High, wants to be an athletic trainer, and she just so happened to get the chance to meet Georgia's, world-class, all-time Hall of Fame athletic trainer in Ron Corson. She really loves Georgia. It sounds like she's already dreaming about Georgia for her brother. She's already, basically said that she's kind of given her brother the notion that she's definitely not going to restrict him from choosing Georgia in the future. So it was a big visit for Quentin Somerville and his family. And if you got the chance to read the story on Dog Nation this week, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Next up on our list for the top targets for the 2021 cycle, let's cycle through a few names. We've got next on our list, we're going to move to number 7. That's Lavassier Carroll. Running back. Running back's going to be very big for Georgia in the 2021 class. There's a lot of names. Evan Pryor, you've already seen that one. Lavassier Carroll, a Georgia native out of Warren County. He's now at IMG. He's going to make his decision during the summer prior to his senior season. He's going to take his official visits. During the spring as well. He's going to knock that out in short order. Lavassier Carroll, I think the way to look at these running backs is which one of these guys are the thunder backs, the big backs, the thumper backs for the 2021 cycle. Lavassier Carroll is one of those guys that has the speed, even with some good size, and he's faced some elite competition there at IMG Academy. Moving on the list, we got the next guy up on our list as we try to move forward on our top targets for 2021. You saw Lavassier Carroll there out of IMG, another highly rated running back. I think he's the number 7 overall running back for the 2021 cycle. Next on the list, we get to turn the page on our next one. Number 6 is Isaiah Johnson, nation's number 2 corner. A lot to like about this guy. He lives in West Virginia. He grew up in Atlanta, in the Atlanta metro area. He visited Georgia recently, came in along with Tony Grimes. And, Isaiah Johnson is a guy that, man, he was at the opening last year as a junior, and you know what that means when a guy makes it to the opening during his junior year. So you've got Isaiah Johnson there, 5-star corner, another ideal target for Georgia at defensive back in the class. Moving forward to number 5 on the 2021 top targets countdown for Dog Nation. You've got a lot of guys that you want to take a good look at. Make sure the names just keep getting bigger and better on this list. We've got number 5 is Cody Brown. That's out of Parkview High School in Parkview in Metro Atlanta in Gwinnett County. Parkview High School. He's a guy that another big back. He's a guy that's considered one of the thumpers of the class. 4.0 grade point average. Really top guy to look at right there. Cody Brown. And what we'll do right now is while we've got our top 5, we're going to come back to that. But right now, we kind of teased a special guest that would be joining us on tonight's Before the Hedges program. And gosh, I've been talking to this guy for a long time. I want you guys to get a chance to hang out with him a little bit tonight. That would be, let me get my headphones on right here. That would be nation's number 1 overall center, recent Georgia signee, Sedrick Van Pran Granger. We have Sedrick on the line, and he's joining us from New Orleans tonight. Hey, Sedrick, buddy, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, you, Mr. Cintel.
Sedrick Van Pran Granger. So, guys, here's what our format's going to be tonight. Sedrick, great interview, always really good at talking to the media, always handles himself with a lot of composure. But, folks, I've almost asked Sedrick here about every question that I possibly could. Continue to find lots of interesting things about him. So we're going to take a few quick ones with Sedrick just to kind of see where he's at right now. But then after that, I'm going to let you guys kind of have some free-for-all with Sedrick Van Pran Granger. You can get in A gap, B gap, and whatever you got for him, I'm going to play the middleman and see how many of these questions that you can get to about Sedrick Van Pran Granger. I call him SVPG a lot now. Like when I was talking to him to set up this interview, I said, it's not Central Standard Time. This is SVPG time. So, Sedrick, my first question for you, bud, is you told me a really great story about, hey, you're committed, you're signed, everybody's touting you headlines, you have your signing day parties, and then all of a sudden you got a little bit of fame, but then all of a sudden it reaches another gear when one of the greatest players in Georgia history actually knows about you. Sedrick, can you relay that story about maybe what it was like for you as maybe a true fan moment to hear that Herschel Walker actually knew about you and being a part of the Georgia 2020 class?
That was amazing. I had no idea. So the way it went down was I did an interview with Will Brown and Ricky Jackson, two legends in New Orleans. And so basically they brought me up for an interview, and I was talking to Mr. Jackson or whatever, and he said, well, you going to Georgia, I would like to get you in touch with, Herschel Walker. So I was like, that'd be awesome. So on the spot, he calls up, Herschel Walker. And we got there on the phone, like, how you doing, Mr. Walker, And, of course, he tells me, not to call him Mr. Walker. He tells me to call him Herschel. But I found that a little odd. Yeah, and he goes on to tell me, he knows who I am. And he was actually reading about me the previous night before on his way to catch a plane. So I was just in utter disbelief. I couldn't believe that, a great, all-time great like that would know who I am. So it was a very humbling experience for me.
Sedrick, did Herschel have anything to say to you? What did he say that you remember other than, I guess that's a true OMG moment when one of the greatest college football players in history, I think he was recognized at the championship game this year as a number 2, number 3 overall player for college football. What's that like when that guy knows about a young man who just makes sure he blocks his man pretty well in New Orleans, Louisiana?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I wasn't thinking about much during that. I was still in disbelief, like, man, like, Herschel Walker, like, for real? Like, this is what we're doing? So, I was really in disbelief that he knew who I was. So, it took me a while after to gather my thoughts. But after the fact, I just got to think about it, and I really wish I could have asked him a little bit more. But for the most part, he just kind of told me, he's happy that I'm going to be a part of the organization and that, he'll try to keep in contact, take care of me if I need to be taken care of or get me in contact with different people. So I really appreciate that.
Sedrick, we've got a lot of fans already chomping at the bit to talk to you. We're seeing some new nicknames, some ones I haven't even heard of, man. I just saw the Lone Granger pop up here. They're having fun. So, Sedrick, what's it like now that you've signed, sealed, and delivered? I'd imagine your phone is a lot more dry these days now that all that stuff's put to bed. I mean, what's that like for you now? Is your phone not pinging as much? Is those constant conversations you had to have in January, does that feel like a relief to you?
Well, it's still a little busy, but the good thing about this is there are coaches, media, so it's not as important to answer those people because we have a good enough relationship. They understand. Well, I might be working on I might be doing different things, so I might not be on my phone. I might just want to lay out in my bed and listen to music. So my phone is still busy, but I'm to a point now where I haven't really been on social media as much. I haven't logged out like I usually do, but I'm taking a break a little bit from things and just kind of trying to build my body back up. So I'm happy that, my phone isn't as busy as it was, but it's still busy, and I'm just happy that I can kind of take some time to put it to the side.
Sedrick, how tough were the last couple of weeks when everybody wanted to take their shot at you? I know you took a late official to Alabama, late official to Florida. I'm sure when Nick Saban leans on you and says, son, this is how it might be for you, gosh, it's hard not to take that as, the gospel a little bit. What were those last weeks like for you?
Yes, sir. I think for anybody, that would be hard. And then at the end of the day, growing up as a college athlete, well, not a college athlete, but a student athlete, you watch college football, and, Alabama, is a great program. It speaks for itself. But I think the biggest thing that stood out for me was I had to remember why. I'm not going to say I remember why, because I never thought about flipping. But I had to just, make sure that I keep reminding myself that why I came to Georgia. Great relationship with the coaches. I have family there, great education. And also, too, I believe that they're on the verge of winning the national championship. So it was kind of one of those things where do you want to be a part of something that's established? Or do you want to be a part of establishing something? And I want to be one of those guys to help establish them.
Sedrick, I think one of the things that always struck me about you is your off-the-field walk and the way you handled yourself. I remember speaking to you, it's probably Labor Day weekend 2018, and you're telling me you want to be a graphic designer. I listened to your dad about how when you first enrolled at Easton, some of your coaches were like, let's get him another PE class or a weight class so he can watch film and get ready. And, your father articulated it to me very well that, my son has a gift in art. I don't know if he has a gift in football yet, but we're not going to give up one of his gifts and one of his passions for something that might be there. And then the way you carry yourself, man, I don't know whether this is innate for you, but it literally seems like you want to be the type of guy that coaches can trust and place a lot of faith in. That was evident when, I don't know, I have a lot of people on this feed know the story, but Sedrick was voted a team captain at the playoffs for the postseason of his sophomore year at Warren Easton. Now, that's a major program in Louisiana. There's a reason why they got an eagle with boxing gloves on that helmet and that logo. That's because Easton, man, those guys fight and those guys get after it and they play hard-nosed football. Sedrick, has it always been a case for you where you want to be the guy that coaches can depend on, put a lot on your shoulders, and you're going to carry it?
I would say so, yes. Mostly what I started off doing, coming in early, was I've always been that guy that just wanted to do right. If something was set in stone to do it, that's how I was going to do it. And really, that's where it stems from. But as I matured as a kid and as I came up as a young man in high school, I started to realize how important. I would probably say around that time I became chief captain, I started to realize how important the relationships were with your coaches. So that's really when I started to develop that wanting to be trustworthy for coaches and things like that. And a lot of that happens, off the field as well as on the field, just doing what you have to do. But I've always been that guy that wanted to do right. So I think when I fully understood how the relationships work with coaches and being a trustworthy guy, I think that's when it clicked. And I was just, this is the type of guy that I want to be.
Cedric, last one for me, and then I'll let our viewers and listeners chime in. I think, one of the things that also is, so many things. He bench pressed 185 pounds 30 times to win the strongman challenge at the Under Armour. But yet, at the same time in the classroom, he's an A student. Sedrick, is that GPA? Where's that at right now? And maybe where do you stand in your class at Warren Easton High? Is that something that's important to you as well?
Oh, okay. So right now I'm at a 3.9. I'm class rated 12. I'm really trying to get a 4.0 this semester so I can top the top 10. It's going to be hard, but I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get it right now.
See, that's just Sedrick, guys. As long as I've been talking to this young man, it's just I get the same vibes from him as when I was speaking to Aziz Ojulari, a guy who was a team captain for Georgia as a redshirt freshman. I think the most impressive compliment, rather than his blocking or anything I see on his film, is when you listen to Sedrick Van Pran and you talk to him for as long as I have, you get these future team captain type vibes from him, and that's just nothing deliberate. That's not him trying to sound cool for an interview. That's just the way he is. You see these Under Armour highlights right now. You saw guys just gravitate around him, and he just has that true leadership quality.
Thank you.
Sedrick, I got some people that want to know how they can win a Pancake King Award too, or that Strongman Trophy. Dante Edie, longtime viewer for us, wants to know, what's your regimen? What's your off-season regimen look like? What are you doing, or what do you think you're going to be doing during your off-season workouts to get ready for Georgia?
So lately I've been doing a lot of the workouts that Georgia has given me, to start getting ready and get my body right. But I'll be honest, I'll probably say consistency is the key. Don't be one of those guys that kind of work out maybe once or twice a week and think that you're getting better, because at the end of the day, you may be getting better, but it'll take a lot longer. So I'll probably say if you can work out 5-6 times a week, if you really can, and that'll really help. Also, too, try to live, at a moderate pace. Always try to go up during workouts. Also go up weekly too. That helps a lot too, even if you have to get a spot. But those are probably some of the things I'll say. And also too, one of the biggest things is mentality. I'll be honest, there were a lot of times this summer I didn't want to do push-ups and do sit-ups at night, but it was the guys that I knew that were dependent on me. Those guys were dependent on me. So hey, I'm gonna get out of bed and do what I have to do, because at the end of the day, I can't ask other guys to do something for me, and I'm not doing it for them. So that'll probably be what I'll say.
Sedrick, a couple people have noticed your footwork. I got a couple questions about that. What have you done to get those feet right? Is there something you got to throw a shout out to a trainer or the coaches at Warren Easton? Where did that footwork come from?
So early in my career, I started off a lot with Coach Henry and Luke at Warren Easton. We used to do a lot of Saturday sessions to get our footwork right. So a lot of my footwork and technique comes from both of my offensive line coaches. Coach Span came for junior year. So Coach Luke and Coach Span, they got me right as far as offensive line, but I also worked out a lot as far as like speed and agility with Albert Brock. He's a New Orleans guy. He works out a couple of NFL guys like Deion Jones and things himself. So he works on a couple of those guys, and I started working on with him. And that really helped me a lot too, just working on body control and agility.
Cedrick, we've got a lot of Georgia girls on the feed as well every night. Jill Cobb Burke has a question. She wants to know, what are you most looking forward to as you go off to college?
That is a good question. I would probably say, honestly, just to try to work. I'll be honest, I know everybody's coming in. It'll be hard, but I'm just so excited to be around the guys, man, and just try to put in that work to get on the field as early as possible. And also, too, just play my role in getting this national championship. So I'm really excited about it. Honestly, I'm really ready to be there.
Cedrick, we've had a bunch of our viewers ask basically a variation of this same question. When were you certain that you were going to sign with Georgia? Was there a moment where you're just like, drop the mic, I've heard everything, it's still final? I think you said earlier in one of your answers that you really didn't really think really hard about flipping at all. You were always comfortable. That was the word you always used with guys like me. But what was the moment when you felt like it was 100% locked in, concrete, that you were going to be a Bulldog?
In August. In August. I mean, I know Vivian, trying to make it seem like, with Coach Pitt leaving, I was a little uneasy. And I'll be honest, at first, I was. I didn't know who we were going to get. Once I found out it was Coach Matt Luke, I was back comfortable again because I knew how good a guy he was. So I'll probably say since August, give or take maybe 1 or 2 weeks.
Cedrick, I thought it was funny. A lot of people are asking on the feed. I've seen a question about who was recruiting you the hardest at the Under Armour game. You can share your own insight on this, Cedrick, but it looked to me like you guys already knew what you were doing and you guys were already vibing and working on future college relationships during that week. Maybe, one of the things that happened for Georgia for the good out of the Under Armour week was I think it solidified a lot of the relationships that you guys had already maybe had in place a little bit through text messages and through visits.
Oh, yes, sir. So it's crazy because a lot of the time, so I know for me at least, I'm not really too big into recruiting, so I meet guys and stuff like that, but I don't really sit home and kind of look at guys, see like who's top rated, stuff like that. I kind of just want to play football and focus on what I have going on in my whole life. But I was actually talking to Arian Smith, and he didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who he was, and we clicked, and then talking about, hey, I'm committed to Georgia. I'm committed to Georgia too. So it was kind of those things, and then of course, text the guys like Warren, who already knew we all were Georgia commits. So, it's kind of one of those things where we knew the names, but when we were actually talking to each other at first, we didn't know that we were Georgia commits. So the relationship was genuine. Once we found out that we actually were, it was just like, yeah, I made the right decision.
Yeah, that's a cool story. One of an uncommon story with Sedrick is, we wrote about that, how he basically sat down, had a conversation with Arian Smith. That was a Georgia signee already at that point, and they just started talking, and then about maybe 3 or 4 minutes in the conversation after they talked about school and track and a couple other topics, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm Sedrick. And they're like, I'm Arian. And they're like, oh, I'm committed to Georgia. Well, that's a very funny story. It's one of those, oh, wow, it's a small world after all story.
Yeah.
Sedrick, got a question here. Somebody wants to know, what do you think it's going to be like the first time you run out of the tunnel at Sanford Stadium with all the smoke? Have you thought about that yet?
I haven't, but I'm thinking about it now, and that's going to be a tough one because I've been on the field, with no one in it, and it's very overwhelming. So just imagine everybody out there, screaming for you and your team. That's going to be a big one. I can't imagine how I'll feel, but pretty sure it'll stick with me for a lifetime.
Sedrick, I think one of the last things, everybody's just basically saying that it just seems natural when you listen to him, guys. This is a guy that young men can rally around. Sedrick, before we let you go, man, I guess in your own words, can you just describe the type of effort and commitment you will make on your part in order to try? And I think Kendall Milton always uses the word natties, but what are you coming to Georgia to accomplish in your own words? I mean, what's the mindset you have coming in?
Okay, so for me, the biggest thing I want to do is I want to come in and I want to show guys that I can listen first. First thing I want to do, I want to come in, I want to work and just listen. Just listen to what Coach has to say, listen to what the leaders that are already set in place have to say. And once you earn that respect, I think that's when you start to step up as a leader. That's when you start to, have the right to start to tell guys guys, hey, man, let's push it a little harder. Let's do this, let's do that. But I think at first, I have to come in and, listen, just learn the ropes. So I'm looking forward to that. But eventually I do want to be, that team captain type guy and, really just help lead us to a national championship.
All right, guys. Hey, Sedrick, really appreciate you joining us. I know a lot of Georgia fans wanted to hear from you, and they could tell that I just wasn't writing fiction stories when I was telling everybody how solid and mature and professional this guy is. It's been a pleasure covering you so far, man, and I surely appreciate you making some time for us tonight.
No problem. Anytime. Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Take it easy, Sedrick.
Okay.
So, guys, Sedrick Van Pran Granger. I mean, I write these stories and I try to reflect just what type of young man that guy is. And clearly, Sedrick Van Pran Granger, man, that's a guy. It was funny, some takeaways from that conversation. I think you turned it like when he knew he was going to commit to Georgia and sign with Georgia was back in August. I think he'd been a silent commitment for some time before that, but say for a couple of weeks, he knew he was going to be a Bulldog. And you listen to him talk about what it means to him to be a leader, to be someone guys can be counted on. And I'll say it again, he just kind of oozes that team captain type vibe, future team captain type vibe for the way he handles himself. You hear that part where he talked about his 3.9 grade point average right now, and he wants to buckle down and make sure he finishes in the top 10 of his class, because currently number 12 in his class of graduating seniors at Easton just isn't good enough. And that's just an example of Sedrick Van Pran Granger and the type of player and the type of representative of the University of Georgia he's going to be. And hey, right off the top, wasn't it fun kind of getting his reaction to the Herschel Walker moment when Herschel Walker knows your name? It's one thing for all of us recruiting reporters and folks on Twitter for these guys to get followers, but then when Herschel Walker, the greatest Georgia Bulldog of all time, knows about him, tells him to stop calling him Mr. Walker and to call him Herschel, that's pretty big time right there. And Sedrick Van Pran Granger wound up, deservedly so, as the nation's #1 center for the 2020 class. And he's not an early enrollee. He'll show up around May or June with the rest of the Georgia's #1 overall rated recruiting class for the 2020 cycle. So, guys, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed Sedrick Van Pran Granger. We got this new time slot. You can do a little bit more with getting some of these young people on the phone rather than 3 p.m., at least until football season starts. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that conversation with Sedrick Van Pran Granger. Luckily, Sedrick was able to join us right in the middle of our top targets for 2021. I think we were at number 5 on the countdown right there. We were at number 5 with our 2021 guys. And the name that we were about to pop up when Sedrick, we were ready to get Sedrick on the phone so he could talk to everybody. You got Cody Brown. Cody Brown out of Parkview, 220 pounds, Snellville, Georgia, a big thumper back. I remember Cody telling me his story. Now, this has changed now that Kendall Milton's on campus, but Cody Brown told me a story about when Georgia was recruiting him and he came in for the South Carolina visit. And Dale McGee basically said, hey, look around. Look at all these running backs right now. You would be as big as any running back in our room. And that's what Cody Brown brings to the table. He's got a 4.0 grade point average, nothing but A's in high school. His academic walk means a great deal to him. So you see kind of maybe a common thread here with Georgia and a lot of these guys is they're looking for those guys that handle their business in the classroom as well and not just on the football field, because this staff is starting to believe, seeing guys like Andrew Thomas, DeAndre Swift, those guys that are stellar in the classroom usually turn out to be pretty good football players as well, especially when their tape and their skill set already maybe mandates them that they're already good enough to be in the SEC and to be a Georgia Bulldog. Next up on our list, we're going top targets 2021. Next guy on the list. One other thing is we bring up things right there. Cody Brown. I think the next name on the list is Will Shipley. That's the number 4 running back on our top targets list. But Will Shipley's a 5-star. He's out of Matthews, North Carolina. Do love the versatility in his game. Get this, guys. He caught 39 passes for like 600 yards for a state champion team in North Carolina. He's got a 4.4 grade point average. 4.33 grade point average. He's a 4.4 in the 40. One of his goals is either to raise his GPA or lower his 40 to where his GPA is higher than his 40. Great young man to talk to. Great grades. Interesting recruiting here because he's got everybody in the country after him. Yet he ran for over 10 yards per carry last year in North Carolina. That's in the third highest level of North Carolina high school football. But Will Shipley, he's a guy that, Stanford, Ohio State, Clemson, North Carolina. Everybody's chasing him. Everybody wants him to be a part of their program. Notre Dame is another school along with Georgia that shows up big on his radar. But Will Shipley comes from a family where there are, I believe the number is 23 alumni of North Carolina State, including his immediate family. So there's a lot of North Carolina State Wolfpack in his family, and yet maybe the thing that stands out in stark contrast is the North Carolina State doesn't have the level or the type of football program that Will Shipley could play at. Georgia's prioritized him since he took a visit for the Texas A&M game. Georgia started recruiting his family. Dale McGee has prioritized him. Dale McGee was there. Kirby Smart was there when they could come visit and get on the road to see him in January. So a lot of guys, you're looking at Georgia's running back picture. I think maybe one of the two biggest, tipping points for Georgia in the 2021 class is, who are the running backs going to be? Because you got Lavassier Carroll, you got Cody Brown, you got Will Shipley. Those are a lot of names right there. Evan Pryor, let me make sure to include him in that group where Georgia's going to get one of those guys. Is Georgia going to get two of those guys? When that happens, maybe the running back picture and the rest of the priorities for the class fall into place. The other clear priority I see in my mind is the linebacker position, the inside linebackers and the outside linebackers. That's because Georgia only signed one outside linebacker, although Mikhail Sherman is a little bit of a hybrid where he can play inside or outside. Got the speed to play outside, but what's Georgia doing at backer? What's Georgia doing at running back? I think when you get those two things figured out, along with the defensive back position, you ask me, the building blocks of the 2021 class, that's backers, that's running backs, and then that's defensive backs. And those are three areas where Georgia needs to continue to supply the pipeline. I know they signed two running backs in the 2020 class in Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton, but they could quite frankly, you see a couple of running backs move on to the NFL, and Zamir White and James Cook after their third season in Athens, and they need to keep restocking that position as well. But then you look at running back and you look at inside linebacker, outside linebacker, and defensive back. Georgia didn't really go too hard in the paint in the 2020 cycle, and those will become clearer needs and bigger needs for the 2021 class. The next name on the list, number 3 on our 2021 top targets list, that's a name that's going to drop just one slot. Nothing to do with what Amarius Mims is all about, 5-star offensive tackle out of Bleckley County in Cochran, Georgia. Amarius Mims took a big visit for a junior day in January to check out Georgia, and it was really a catch-up visit for Georgia because with Pittman, Georgia was his public leader. Without Pittman, initially Alabama and LSU had crept ahead of the Bulldogs, and then he had another get-acquainted, get-back-to-normal visit to Georgia. He does feel like Georgia's still home. He does like the way Matt Luke is recruiting him. I remember Amarius telling me he watched the entire Sugar Bowl against Baylor just so he could get a sense and a glimpse of what Matt Luke was like as a coach. He loved the energy that Matt Luke coached with. He thought it would be a great fit if he chose Georgia. He thought Matt Luke would be a great guy to play for. So Amarius Mims, here's what he's going to do. He's going to take some spring officials. He's told me that Oklahoma, USC are a couple of schools that are on his mind as he takes his official visits. LSU is another school that will likely get a spring official visit as well. But Amarius Mims, 6'7.5", 320. You look at him, he's the nation's number 2 offensive tackle. Oddly enough, last year was his first year playing as a full-time tackle for Bleckley County and Coach Vaughn Lassiter. That's Jake Fromm's old coach at Houston County. In Bleckley County in Cochran, Georgia. But his sophomore year, guys, he was an exclusively almost a tight end, a blocking tight end for Bleckley County. That's how athletic he is. And Amarius Mims, drops just one slot right now down to number 3. And probably, one of the reasons for that is when I reevaluated that list for this week, Georgia signed 7 offensive linemen. They signed Tate Ratledge. They signed Broderick Jones. The offensive tackle position isn't as big a priority, even though it's a huge monster type potential get like a Marius Mims in this class. I think the fact that he's number 3 overall in the top targets already still shows a great amount of respect to what a Marius Mims can do for Georgia potentially in the 2021 class. The number 2 name was a little bit of a newsmaker tonight. That would be Barrett Carter out of North Gwinnett. Barrett Carter, we're moving him up one slot because I think this guy is an indispensable piece for Georgia, a priority in the 2021 class. He's a guy that's rated right now as an outside backer, number 6 outside linebacker, number 100 overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Just wait, folks. When the industry kind of re-racks Barrett Carter as an inside backer, that's what Georgia's recruiting him as. A lot of schools are recruiting him as, because he doesn't have that ideal 6'4", 6'5" length as an outside backer. And yet he can make all the plays on the football field. He works out with defensive backs. He works out with corners and safeties. A good comparison for his skill set would be Isaiah Simmons. Not saying he's exactly like Isaiah Simmons, but the things his coaches ask him to do and that he's capable of doing will remind me and should remind a lot of folks what Isaiah Simmons was trusted to do for Clemson in that defense. And, one little bit of scouting I heard through the grapevine is if North Gwinnett would have advanced to face Marietta High in the finals, then North Gwinnett was going to try and stick Barrett Carter on Rick Gilbert to try and guard him in a major postseason game, because that's the type of skill set Barrett Carter has, a 3-down linebacker. He announced his top 11 tonight on social media. We had a post up on that about from Dog Nation. You see a decidedly southern flair to that. Ohio State and Oklahoma, those are the only 2 schools that really are outside the southeastern footprint. You got 5 Southeastern Conference schools right there. You see Florida, you see Alabama, you see LSU, you see Georgia, you see Auburn. Then you see some Atlantic Coast Conference there in Georgia Tech, Duke, Clemson, and Florida State as well. Barrett Carter, in-state really means a lot to him. He's been talking to me about a lot of his top schools for some time, and Georgia Tech was always a school that ended up in there as well because he had to represent for his city and also for his home state as well. That's just the type of guy that Barrett Carter is. Number 2 this week on our top targets list, and we got a number 1. It's the same as it ever was since version 1.0 came out on our top targets list. That is James Williams out of Plantation, Florida. James Williams is going to have some news this week. Going to announce his top 3. While some prospects announce a top 11, a top 8, a top 6, I've seen a top 18 before. I've seen a top 22 before. And you see James Williams, the nation's number 1 safety. Not quite 6'5", 5-star prospect. I think he's number 4 overall. James Williams will announce his top 3 on February the 15th. I do look for the Georgia Bulldogs to be in there. James Williams also took another visit to Georgia for Junior Day as well. There you go, guys. That's your 2021 top targets as we board through that list with a halftime break to talk with nation's number 1 overall center, Sedrick Van Pran Granger. If you didn't see that, if you just jumped on the Facebook feed after your evening commute, get back to that. Hit that interview back, because you got to see another good sense of Sedrick Van Pran Granger and what he will mean to the Georgia football program. Now we're going to head to some online chatter. Everybody wants to know maybe some tweets, some social media pings of interest that caught our eye over the last week since we last joined everybody on Before the Hedges. One of those that we'll start out with for our online chatter is I think we have the top 3 there for James Williams, but we've got a certain specific order they're going to roll in. Connor, let's start off that online chatter right now with what you got loaded up in the wheelhouse. Yep, right there. James Williams plays so much to honor the memory of his mother. That was a tragic passing for her life. But James Williams, he's got that Be Great 20 right there. He's dropping his top 3 on his birthday, February the 15th. Hashtag blessed. And, one of the schools that has always been recruiting James Williams very well, and I think maybe so much it's been to the decline of their program, is how Georgia's been able to swoop into South Florida with James Coley's help and to get guys like Tyson Campbell, to get guys like Devod Wilson, James Cook. The list keeps going on and on, South Florida, Marcus Rosemy. But Miami is a school that is definitely recruiting James Williams very hard. And if you look at this recent edit, I thought this is a really cool edit as they played up Ed Reed, the GOAT, that the Canes did for James Williams. He's got him with Ed Reed. That's a Photoshop right there. And you've got him and Ed Reed and James Williams making both sides of the Miami U right there. One of the cleaner edits that you'll see out there. Thought that was good enough to make our online chatter this week. James Williams, number 1 on our top targets list. He's been number 1 on the 2021 top targets list since it debuted in early January. Next up, I want to take you a little tour through a couple of things we've seen on social media through our online chatter. I think we've got a lot of choices to choose from. We've got some tight end stuff to look at. We've got, a young man out of Napa, California. You're going to hear from him on Dog Nation or read about him on Dog Nation on the pages of Dog Nation shortly. But Brock Bowers, also another visitor to Georgia for his Junior Day tour. You see Brock right there. That's his Instagram post right there. 6'3", 215. Funny. He took his Junior Day visits, but this is one of those things where maybe the stars might line up a little bit for Brock Bowers. Consider this. He went to visit LSU, but the day he visited LSU, he clicked off 3 schools over a weekend. Well, Brock Bowers, that was the day the Tigers were in the Oval Office talking to President Trump. So he didn't really get to see a lot of the staff, a lot of the key guys. Didn't really get to, press the flesh with a lot of the big-time representatives of the LSU program. Still saw the pod, still saw the stadium, still all saw everything like that. He also saw Clemson, but it was very interesting about Clemson because he went there and they told him they were only going to take 1 tight end in the class. And then right after his unofficial visit, Clemson accepted a commitment from another tight end in the class. And Brock Bowers, as he understands it, basically he feels that that's basically eliminated him from Clemson for this year. So the one school where he kind of got to see all the bells and whistles for his unofficial visits in January on at least his East Coast swing was Georgia. Loved the vibe there. You're going to read about him on DogNation.com very shortly. But Brock Bowers, 6'3", 215. He's the type of guy who had a monster junior year. He ran a 4.55 laser at the opening. That was in the spring of his sophomore year. He had an offer from Nevada at that point, but then after that, all the stars aligned for him. He was going to get all the stars he ever needed after that and all the offers. Brock Bowers, unique skill set here. He took a kickoff back 85 yards in a high school game last year as a junior, but also has the skill set where he averaged almost 29 yards per catch for over 1,000 yards out in Napa, California. And I know some of those on the Dog Nation family are kind of rooting to see things matriculate strongly between Georgia and Brock Bowers, because it'd be awfully nice to take a trip out to wine country out in Napa to be able to check in and be able to best tell Brock Bowers and his story. Moving on through online chat, I want you to see a recent offer for the University of Georgia, and it's kind of a nice little chain of events of how things go. I want you to see first off. He calls himself Lights Out 9, I believe, on Twitter. That's his social media handle. But this is a guy, he's a 3-star prospect out of the 2021 class, and he drops a top 10. First of all, let's look at his top 10 list. You see all these schools on there. That's Dakota Mitchell, Rockout 9, excuse me. He sets his top 10, and look at that. You got Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida State, A&M, Clemson, Florida, Auburn, LSU, South Carolina, and Miami. A couple days later, here's what happens. He gets an offer from the University of Georgia. Georgia, Mr. Mitchell, Dakota Mitchell, told me that Georgia's recruiting him. Although he's got wide receiver film, lots of all-around film on his highlight tape. Georgia offered him as a safety. He's about 6 feet, about 170 pounds. Interesting now, after one season, George Pickens has already become the guy that a lot of recruits use when they tweet out their Georgia edit. That's the stock photo they use now to identify and reflect the Georgia program. And then it was a day after that. Look at that, how that relationship continues to evolve. He makes another social media tweet right there for Go Dogs. He's got the emoji. He's got the dog emoji and the look at eyes out type emoji for things right there. So it's kind of quickly how that top 10 can change. When he says his recruiting is still open to all schools, it certainly sounds like his recruiting is now open to the University of Georgia as well. Got a couple more pieces of online chatter, I believe. I want to take you to this defensive lineman in the 2021 class. That's Javari Ritzie. He's a top 165 overall prospect. Also took a junior day visit. Also very active and very pro Georgia right now on social media. For those of you guys that are wondering, what could be a potential defensive lineman for Georgia in the 2021 class, you saw that list of names in our top 12. Didn't see the defensive linemen, those trench monsters, those guys that Trey Scott brings in. Didn't see a lot of those names yet who are going to become the top targets for Georgia in the 2021 defensive line class. Javari Ritzie is a guy out of North Carolina. That's Trey Scott's backyard specialty because he's got a lot of connections in that state. He's a strong side defensive end, maybe a 3 technique type. He's already 6'4.5", about 265. And generally, when a young man is already over 260 in high school, that equates well, especially before his senior year. That equates well for him putting his hand on the ground and maybe playing some inside and outside for an SEC program. Javari Ritzie is in the name right there. And I think Javari also had a top 12, and this was prior to his Georgia visit. You saw the nice little glacial edit behind there, those Rocky Mountains or those snow-capped peaks right there. He also included Georgia in his top 12. You got a Michigan, you got Wake Forest. Look at him. He's got all his in-state schools in there. He's got North Carolina. He's got North Carolina State. He's got Wake Forest. He's got Duke. And then he's got some big boys like Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Florida. Tennessee also makes the list there as well. That's your online chatter, some of the things that we saw that caught our eye over the last week. One more thing I want to pull up, Connor. We had considering some other names to look at there for the 2021 top targets. My good buddy Brandon. By the way, folks, make sure you wish him a happy birthday on social media. Get at him on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. Wish Brandon a happy birthday because today is his birthday. I'm sure he's out celebrating with loved ones right now. But top targets, the remaining top targets, guys that didn't quite make that top 12 list. Bunch of names I'm going to roll through real quickly right here for everybody. You've got you're going to see some more offensive linemen on this list. You got Brock Bowers, who almost made our top 12 list. If we had a 13, I would probably put Brock Bowers at 13. Savion Byrd, 5-star offensive tackle. Wants Georgia to show him more interest. Isaiah Brevard, one of the top 75 receiver. Terrence Ferguson, we wrote about him recently on Dog Nation. I think he would have been maybe number 14 on the list. Ajayi Hall, Tim Keenan, Shmuel Munden Jr., Javari Ritzie, you saw him on our kind of online chatter. Jaden Thomas out of Pace Academy, and 4-star Mario Williams, who visited Georgia for his junior day alongside Brock Vandegrift and also Amarius Mims. Those two guys are pretty good friends, or as good as friends can be, coming from different parts of the country. And now, like I said earlier, we don't have our 6-pack for this week, but kind of let's put, 5 minutes, 7 minutes on the clock, whatever we can do. We'll go for some rapid fire. We'll go through. You guys got questions? Hit me with them, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate everybody. I want to first take care of a lot of our good folks on the Dog Nation forum. I don't know if you guys are on the Dog Nation forum yet, but I put in a question request for everybody on the Dog Nation forum, so I wanted to get some of their questions in as well. J-Dog has a question. He's got 5,237 posts on the Dog Nation forum. Thank you, J-Dog, for that. But he wants to know, is the door closed on Caleb Williams? Caleb Williams, I would say that door is closed. It was closed by 5-star Brock Vandegrift. I can't see 2 elite quarterbacks coming to the same program. That's just kind of portal-proofing their decision. Georgia is looking squarely at Gunnar Stockton in the 2022 quarterback cycle for their top target for the entire 2022 class. J-Dog's other question was there about who looks good in the 2022 cycle. J-Dog got another question. What's the most needed position group for the 2021 class? I think it's linebacker. I think Georgia needs to get special again at outside linebacker and inside linebacker. You see guys like, Monty Rice will be gone. Adam Anderson, Jermaine Johnson, Robert Beals still remained in the program, but there's a lot of guys that could be exhausting their eligibility or looking towards the NFL draft in the coming seasons. And Channing Tindall, Quay Walker, fellas like that. So I think Georgia really needs to go hard at the linebacker position. They really did well at wide receiver and offensive line in this class. They've got their quarterback already. I think, like I said earlier in the top targets list, I think running back and backer are the two position groups that speak to me right now about who looks good. Chucko Stick has a question. 97 post, still a junior member of our Dog Nation forum, wants to know how many defensive backs is Georgia looking to take this cycle. How realistic is it to finally land 2 5-stars in that room? Number one, I'm just going to say very honestly, not very realistic for any school to land 2 5-star corners, especially the number 1 and number 2 cornerbacks in any cycle. That would be unprecedented. I think that would go into one of Kirby Smart's top 10 moments as a Georgia head coach recruiter. If he was able to bring 2 5-stars and the nation's number 1 and number 2 corners into the same class. But think about that for a minute, because when you look at the 2021 defensive backs for Georgia, for the 2021 season, there'll be no Eric Stokes, there'll be no DJ Daniel, there'll likely be no Tyson Campbell, there'll be no Mark Webb. Maybe you would have Tyreek Stevenson, you would have Keely Ringo, you'd have Jalen Kimber, but Georgia would definitely have to restock that defensive back room for the 2021 season, and that's why 2 guys like Tony Grimes and Isaiah Johnson are clear priorities. Teddy has a question. He have 5,387 posts on the Dog Nation forum. He wanted to know who are the 5 best non-committed recruits to potentially sign this cycle. That was answered by our top targets. I went James Williams 1, Barrett Carter 2, Amarius Mims 3, Will Shipley 4, and Cody Brown 5. You got 2 running backs among the top 5 there. That shows how muddy, how maybe clearer that position outlook will be for Georgia when they take somebody in this class. Moving on to Facebook, got to take care of everybody on Facebook here. All of our top fans on Facebook. Chris Pryor wants to know in-state versus out-of-state talent for 2021. Chris, I think it will still always lean towards the best players available. That would be out-of-state talent. But I think it would probably be, one of the things Kirby did was more senior year evaluations in this 2020 class. I think it'll probably national footprint, in-state guys. I think Georgia will probably try to wind up around 15 to 10 every cycle in terms of 15 guys out of state, the best out of state prospects they could find, and then the 10 best in-state prospects they could find. Because make no mistake about it, I say this on this program a lot, Georgia's only charge in recruiting is to sign the 25 best prospects they possibly can. John Benton has a good question. What recruit will BA obsess over for 2021? Connor, that's a very good question. I would say the recruit that Mr. Benton, John, the recruit that BA will obsess over the most in 2021. I think his quota has been filled a little bit with wide receivers. He's got his quarterback already. I think he's going to be looking at James Williams and Amarius Mims. I think those are 2 of the bigger names that he'll be obsessing over for 2021. Chris Pryor, thanks for the shout out on that. John William Adams got a question. Any recruits say they want to go to Georgia because the best talent in the country is at your position there? Well, here's what I can say about that, John. A lot of the recruits want to come to Georgia because they know they'll be competing against the best players in the country in practice, which will make the games a lot easier. If you're an outside linebacker, you'll face quality offensive tackles. Quality offensive tackles like upperclassmen like Isaiah Wilson and Andrew Thomas, but also quality offensive tackles like the same guys that are being recruited in your specific position group. Steve Reynolds has a question about Christian Zachary. I like Zachary a lot. I've been a late addition to Georgia, just picked up his offer late last week. I love the way he uses this platform as a message to share his faith and how he feels about his faith. Steve Reynolds, Christian Zachary's out of Carrollton. Really fast guy. You look at his pass rush moves. The guy is very skilled, gets very low, doesn't give a big target for the offensive lineman to punch. Travis McCullough wants to take another West Coast tight end. He liked what he heard about the Brock Bowers upset. Joel Moody has a question. Joel, always good to hear from you, man. After 2 years removed from his surgeries, do I think that Zeus will eclipse the 1,000-yard mark this season? If not, do I think Georgia will have a 1,000-yard rusher? I think Zamir is going to be much more like Zeus in the 2020 season. That will be his second year back and maybe his third year 2+ seasons from his first knee injury he suffered in November of 2017. I think the Georgia line will be sporty. I think they'll be spreading guys out a little bit more. I really think with Zamir, he's put in the work. It's his time. He's going to be a physically developed guy. He's going to go into games knowing that he's going to get the ball 10, 15 times a game. My dark horse pick for the leading rusher or the other guy most likely to get over 500 yards in the 2020 season is I like Kendall Milton a lot. I like Milton about as much as the chances are of McIntosh to also crack the 500 to 700 yard mark as well. I was told you see some updates coming out, trickling out. Kendall Milton's already put on about 14 pounds since he arrived at Georgia. It's good weight. It's reshaping his body the way Sinclair's House of Pain wants it to go. He's probably going to be at 230 when he plays this fall. And folks, I'm going to say this over and over again. It's going to be awfully hard to get Kendall Milton on the ground, awfully hard to tackle. All these guys can be quick and have all the moves and the agility and the athleticism in the SEC that they want. But if you see Derrick Henry in the playoffs in the NFL, it is very hard to tackle a man for those contested yards. And Kendall Milton will always finish a lot of his runs with a very physical brand of football and will make it very hard to tackle him. And I know defensive backs will probably start taking some business decisions with tackling Kendall Milton in the third and fourth quarters of games. Guys, we just got a new one. We just got a new format. What do you think of the green background? What do you think of Before the Hedges kind of going back to its old school roots where I just sit here and I chat about all things Georgia football? Now, in the middle of this, we had Sedrick Van Pran Granger interview. I hope you guys sure enjoyed that. If you missed it, please rewind back to the post. Go check back to the beginning of the Facebook feed because in the middle of our top targets for 2021, we had about 10, 15 good minutes with Sedrick Van Pran Granger there live. You get to hear Herschel Walker's story, and you get to see why everyone that comes into contact with Sedrick Van Pran Granger is so impressed with that young man, both on and off the field. Guys, that's the first edition of our revamped Nightly Before the Hedges. I'd like to thank Connor Riley behind the glass for making this thing look smooth, making this thing look so good on the other side of the camera. Do appreciate everybody for stopping by. Thanks to everybody for their questions. Thanks to everybody for Kroger. Thanks to everybody for checking out Kroger, checking out those daily specials as well. Make sure you guys go visit Kroger, and we thank them for all they do for us here on Dog Nation to allow us to bring you content like this every Wednesday night with Before the Hedges. For everybody out there, I'm Jeff Sintel for DogNation.com, and we will see you guys again shortly. See you guys again next week. See you guys on the pages of DogNation.com tomorrow. I'm going to drop a story later tonight or early tomorrow, which gives you my kind of really deep dive final thoughts. Maybe some things you guys didn't notice, the things that I wanted to make clear about kind of my final reads on the 2020 signing class as a whole. Thanks to everybody for joining us.
For more Dog Nation videos, check out youtube.com/DogNation.